All right, in this video, we're going to talk about the complex conjugate, okay? So a complex conjugate. Well, first we need to start with a complex number. So for any complex number, a plus bi, the complex conjugate is a minus bi. Now, that's really simple. You take whatever the sign is in between the real and imaginary part, just that sign, not the real sign, but just that sign, and switch it. And that's going to be the conjugate. So let me tell you why this is important. What happens when I multiply the complex number by its conjugate? So if I multiply a plus bi times a minus bi, let's take a look at what happens. Right? We got a FOIL here. So a times a is a squared. A times a negative bi is a negative a bi. Bi times a is a positive a bi. And then bi times a negative bi is a negative b squared I squared. All right, so what happens next? We got to simplify this. We're going to combine our like terms in the middle. So a negative ABI and a positive ABI, that's gone and goes to 0. And then I have I squared, which turns into negative 1. So I have a squared minus b squared times negative 1. And then that gives me a squared plus b squared. So look what happens. When I multiply a complex number with its conjugate, there are no more imaginary numbers. All right, so that is important to note. Note, when we multiply a complex number by its conjugate, the result is a real number. The result is going to be a real number. There's no more imaginary part, right? So we can then categorize it as a real number. Okay, let's take a look at something, the complex conjugate. What will this look like? The directions here say determine the complex conjugate for the following numbers. For 2 plus 3i, the complex conjugate, so the complex conjugate is going to be 2 minus 3i. Just take the middle term, that sign, whatever is in the middle, and switch it. So for negative 4 minus 5i, the complex conjugate is going to be negative 4 plus 5i. That's really important. Even though the first one was negative, it stays negative. Whatever that a value is, stays. Now let's take a look at another one. 7 minus I would turn into 7 plus I. So that would be the complex conjugate. For 7 minus I is going to be 7 plus I. Negative 6 plus 9i. The complex conjugate is going to be negative 6 minus 9i. It's really just that simple. Now, let's take a look here. The directions on this next one say, show that 7 plus I and 7 minus I are complex conjugates of each other. Well, we can do that. We can show it. When we multiply it out, the result should just be a number, some real number. So let's take a look. We're going to multiply 7 plus I times 7 minus I. Multiply this out. So 7 times 7, we get 49. 7 times a negative I is a negative 7i. I times 7 is a positive 7i. I times a negative I is a negative I squared. Then simplify. Negative 7i and a positive 7i, that's 0. I squared is going to turn into negative 1, so I get 49 minus negative 1. And when you subtract a negative, you're really adding a positive. So it's really like adding a positive. So it would be the same thing as saying 49 plus 1, which is 50. Right? So it turned into a real number. So that means that 7 plus I, 7 minus I are indeed complex conjugates of each other.